everyone. We're going to get things started. I will pass over to Cara.
Thank you. I have to wear the shades. It's just too bright without them, so apologies on that. But I am super excited to be here today, and I know some of you in the crowd are just as excited as I am to be here. To have a discussion around sports marketing and specifically F1 and the sport and how it's blowing up and booming, and how McLaren is really in that and leading that, and Heineken. So I am just super excited about who is also here on stage with me today. So I'm just going to do some quick introductions. I am Cara Lewis. I'm the Chief Investment Officer for Dentsu Media. And with us today, with 6 podiums and 1 pole position to his name, we are delighted to be joined by McLaren Racing F1 driver and one of the sport's top talents, Lando Norris. Also joining us from McLaren is the man responsible for McLaren Racing. He has turned McLaren into the commercial envy of the sport by bringing some of the largest brands in the world to the sport. Please welcome McLaren Racing CEO, Zach Brown. In addition, we have Johnny Cahill from Heineken. He is the CMO of the US. It is a brand that is no stranger to sports marketing and really on the bleeding edge of F1. Welcome, Johnny. On the end, we have Wendell Scott. He is SVP of Sales at Disney. And next to me is Magno Herron, who's the VP of Global Marketing Partnerships at Netflix. So we have to start with Lando. There's no way around it. We're excited to have you here today. Thank you for spending time with us. We are just down the street from the Monaco, infamous Monaco race. I actually was there about 13 years ago when I got stuck because of the Icelandic volcano in Nice. So we visited Monaco. It was amazing. So I feel like I have a connection. Small connection, I guess I should say. But it's one of the favorites to watch, right? So tell us a bit about your passion for the sport of F1, and how did you get into racing, and what is your journey?
Sure. Afternoon, everyone. Well, where did it all start? I guess I'll start there. My dad was a massive fan when he was younger, but as you all know, racing and motorsports in general is a very expensive sport. So he couldn't afford to do it when he was younger, but then when I grew up, and my brother too, he could afford to put both of us into racing, so he could kind of share his passion. And that started when I was like 6-7 years old in go-karts, and then I guess it's a quick journey. It's a long journey, but it's a quick journey from there to Formula One, to joining Zach in 2018, end of 17 into 18, to become the junior driver for McLaren, and then take my full-time race seat in 2019. But it is a very long journey. There's 20 spots in the world. You know, it's a thin and very rare opportunity to get given a chance to be in Formula One. But I get to be with, I would happily say, one of the coolest teams, most historic teams that has been within Formula One, joined by many very special partners. And hopefully join and add to their journey, their history and career within racing. Obviously try to create my own legacy or history at the same time, but what makes it more special for me is being part of the team that I'm with. So 6 podiums, 6 podiums. Almost there, you know, we're getting closer to reaching the top level, and as fast paced and as quick as things happen within Formula One, it also takes time, which is frustrating because I'm not the most patient guy in the world. But you learn to deal with it, and so on. There's many things you learn to deal with. But along with the help of Zach and many others, we've been part of that journey. It's my 5th year within Formula One. 2 more years after this that I'm looking forward to, because we're we're closing in on taking those next steps that we need.
That's awesome. So should I get my 7-year-old prepared, since you were 6 or 7, to be a racer and not on the ice, not on the... all right, Zach, to you. There have been a lot of constructors in and out of Formula One, but McLaren is the longest standing participant since 1966. How have you innovated to stay at the leading edge of the sport?
Oh, well, there's two aspects to that, right? There's innovation from a marketing and talking to our fan base and our partners, and I think the world is moving very fast in what used to be kind of a one-way transmission. Now with the digital age, there's so many different ways to engage with our fan base. Netflix has done an unbelievable job showing what goes on not only on the track, but to some as exciting what happens off the track and the politics, and it's a big business. Of course, we have a new partner in America from a broadcast. Well, they stepped up, and which is fantastic. So we got the world's greatest broadcast partners, and we work with a lot of our partners, the sales forces of the world, who help us now develop a closer relationship with our fan, because there are different ways fans want to consume the sport. Now we can understand what that is and be able to kind of talk to them in their language through their channels, depending on what it is. Are they an avid fan? Are they just a new fan? What part of the world do they live in? So it really allows us to kind of customize the experience. And then, of course, there's the innovation of the race car itself. We live in a world of prototype racing. We change about 80% of our race car over the course of the year. We have developments that are on the car every single weekend. So we're a sport where if you're standing still, you're literally going backwards. The car that qualifies on pole at the first race of the year, if you didn't touch it, would be last by the end of the year. So that's the pace of innovation that takes place within the racing teams. So it's a fascinating world to be a part of, and I'm glad it's getting the exposure around the world it deserves. It's always been very well known, obviously, in Europe, but to see the impact that we now have in North America in such a short period of time has been awesome.
The fans really make it, and I think what Netflix is doing, like the in and out and around, like it is about the race and it's about the win and the podium, but I think it's also about the fans and how they build you up, right? Because it's so exciting to actually see all that come together. Back to you, Lando. What is it like to represent McLaren Racing as a real brand ambassador today?
I mean, it's incredible if I think of where I was when I started. So I started watching Formula One in 2007, 2008, which was when Lewis and Fernando were teammates within McLaren. And that's when I became a fan of McLaren. And I don't just say that because I'm part of them now, but it's who I supported back then. So it's weird now that I'm racing against these guys who are both recognized as probably one of the top F1 drivers in the history of Formula One. But it's, like you said, McLaren is one of the most historic, prestigious teams around. And like I said, as much as I want to do what I can for myself, because you have to be selfish when it comes to sports and when it comes to racing. In some ways, if it's not your career, but if it's not going your way, it can very easily get away from you. And if it's not your career that's going away, if it's not someone else's, it can be yours, So it's a cruel world at the same time. But to be with a team that's had some of the most talented and incredible drivers ever, whether it's Lewis, Fernando, Senna, Prost, Hakkinen. There's so many of the top drivers which have ever been in Formula One who've come through McLaren. So, like I said, I want to add to that. I want to be a name that's on the wall within McLaren whenever you walk through it. You have the boulevard, you have the history of the cars from when it all started to nowadays. And I want to be part of that journey. But yeah, like I said, at the same time, there's pressure that comes with it. There was a lot of pressure back when I started 2019. I hate thinking of it now because it's so many nerves and so many eyes on you, especially when you go into Formula One. You got the TV, you got interviews, you got so many eyes on you. Now the more I can feel it like another Sunday afternoon, then I just go for a drive. The more the more I can just make it feel like that, the better. And it takes away the nerves and it takes away all of that pressure that you get. But yeah, at the same time, it's still a job. As much as I can't call it a job, it's a job because I'm just doing what I love to do. But I have to perform every weekend. There's always pressure to perform. There's always nerves in the end of the day. But it's about dealing with it and turning it into something that motivates you or positive thing.
It's good to hear you have nerves too. Like we all have a little nervousness. All right, Johnny, to you. When I think of Formula One, I think of Heineken, and I hope all of you do too, because there's a bunch around. So please grab a fresh bevy. The Heinekens are very nice here today and cold. So Heineken has been one of the first brands to come to my mind that's all over the sport, that you can basically see tapping in and out of some of amazing moments within in F1. And you're sponsoring the inaugural Heineken Silver Grand Prix in Las Vegas in the fall, which I'm super excited about. And I was driving around in Vegas with Frank, and he was like showing me all this stuff and getting me super excited. But can you tell us about what is Heineken's 360 approach to F1?
Yeah, I think you touched on a bunch of it there, which is, of course, we're really excited to be part of the sport and the fundamental performance aspect of the sport. But with the newfound audience and the explosion of popularity, it's more than the race itself. It's about bringing people together. There's thirst for content. It's about allowing us to, improve the experience as being part of F1. So we as a brand, when we show up at events, whether it's F1 or US Open Tennis or Coachella, our job is to elevate that property. We all win when we do a better job. The consumer wins, the teams win, the sport wins, our brand wins. And so we're really interested in accessing not only the sport, but the audiences that are being brought in. And with the help of the broadcast partners, we're seeing different kinds of people who are just falling in love with F1. So that's a very exciting place to be as a brand owner, because I guess with such an established brand as Heineken, it's 150 years old, people know what we stand for. And we have a beautifully loyal consumer group, but they're the consumers we have today. And as Zach said, it's like if you stand still, you go backwards. We have to also recruit the people who'll be our brand lovers tomorrow. And so the growth of the sport is really helping that. We were chatting backstage about Las Vegas. Clearly what Las Vegas truly needs, because it's not crazy enough, is an F1 race. So we're very much looking forward to that. And that's just going to be a real cap on a year where we have huge momentum in the US. So a lot of planning, running the race down the city streets, a lot of logistics. It's tough for the teams. It's infrastructurally tough, but it's going to be probably the most iconic sports event, we think, in the world this year, and we're really, really excited to get there.
You can tell Johnny likes events. Look at his wrist.
It's amazing. It's amazing when you turn up with free beer, they'll let you in anywhere. So,
That's amazing. I was looking at that before when we were in a meeting. All right, Wendell, to you. When we were doing the prep, it was actually one of the most fun preps that we were doing. We just kind of were bouncing everything off of each other. But one of the things that you brought up and that we want to talk about is really the fan base and who are they? Who are the audience that are actually coming? It was really unique to hear some of the things that you were talking about.
Thank you. So Formula One is definitely having its moment in the United States. If you're an F1 fan, raise your hand. All right, now look at just the diversity of the people that are here. What's happening is we're going through audience expansion and audience development of Formula One across ESPN. And if you think about it, last year was the most watched year for Formula One in its history in the United States. And thinking about 1966, when you started with McLaren, the first race ever in the States was on ABC in 1962. So to have the most watched just be this last year, the most watched races were Miami and Monaco. Next will be Las Vegas, Johnny, I promise. But what we are really thinking about is we don't consider our fans watching F1. They experience F1, right? When you think about the destinations that they're in, the culture, the food, the celebrity, it's having its moment right now. And so through audience development, through Drive to Survive, which is, great series, I'm a big fan of that, what we're finding is that almost a third of the viewing audience are female, right? The other growth area has been Hispanics as well, because our job as a sports rights holder is to give Johnny the best opportunity, because I believe Heineken Silver, that might be the largest launch in the history, right?
Yeah, biggest in the US for us.
Exactly, exactly. So it's so great when the sports rights holder and your brand partners are really aligned. We're looking for three things, right? First thing is awareness, understanding how it looks to experience and feel F1, right? We want trial. We want people to continue to come to watch the race, but not just the race. Watch the qualifying, understanding the pre-race, understanding what it means to win at F1. And that's where Johnny has his brand very much aligned with that. And then last thing we want is that commitment to F1 overall, not just to experience it from a telecast standpoint. What we're also finding is F1 is breaking attendance records in every market that it goes to. Like, how can you think about a sport that is growing this fast with this fan base is amazing.
I think that leads really nicely into our conversation with Magno around, Drive to Survive and the fandom and what shows that are in and around the sport are bringing. I mean, I know I was watching it with my husband and he was just like, oh, now I like to watch TV with you again because you're not watching The Bachelorette. And I'm like, okay, cool, that's awesome. That's good. Thank you very much, Wendell, for giving me that show. But it's really about like how others are learning about the story and how they're telling the story around the sport. So how are you really making those moments valuable for brands at Netflix?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it starts a lot with, Zach, you mentioned it, but there's so many new ways into the sport now, right? So brands can connect and tell stories in a different way. Consumers can experience it in a much more different way. And it starts really with like, we are trying to be authentic to the show and tell the races and who won and who lost and what the stakes of that, because that's important to the core audience and that's key. But when you start thinking about a show like Drive to Survive, you start looking at what's the technology behind it, what's the strategy of each of the teams, who are the key players, what do the folks like Lando do, what are their lifestyles, how do they show up, and if I'm a new audience and a new fan, how do I connect with that? And so the brands that are taking the time to figure out those new connection points to the consumers that aren't necessarily only about the race are having quite a moment. Johnny's Heineken's doing an exceptional job of that. We just had lunch. We talked about other ways in. How else can we go deeper? And there's opportunity to that. So beyond just the growth of the audience, a lot more women, a lot more Hispanic, a lot of a younger audience, it's how deep you can go in so many different verticals to connect and say the right message at the right time. So it's an interesting opportunity, a fun time to be at.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. All right, back to you, Lando. So, watching the show, you're on camera for the show, but then you're also on camera for the race. What is it like to just have like the race and then Stardom simultaneously? And are there any fun moments that you can share, in and around the camera that you're on consistently?
I mean, it's something you definitely get used to, all of this side of it. Netflix have been extremely good with, let's say, not getting in your face and not.
We try.
Yeah. Every now and then, but no, they're very good at kind of you not noticing them, which sometimes has its consequences that you kind of forget that they're there, and you're talking about things or you're doing things that you shouldn't. But
we were going to tell him to put earmuffs on for this answer, but.
But at the same time, that gives everyone the access that is what people see. They see the behind the scenes. They see who we are as drivers and who we are as normal people back home with our friends, with families, and all of this side. And you also see just the raw side of it. Not that as glorious as it always is. Like I spoke about, you see that when it doesn't go well, how quickly things can go against you and where you can end up. So you get used to it, but I'm not the most natural, let's say, behind camera, and like it's not my thing. But you kind of learn to live with it, and I think it's a good thing for myself as a brand and personality and so on. But it is enjoyable. We do good things together. We do very enjoyable things as teams, and things that not always were publicized and behind an actual TV camera. Now that they are, I think it's a very good thing. So you're seeing more sides of everyone, the good things, the bad things, and I think the more that you can open up from all of this, the better. But TV is it's a weird thing because it's not like what I do. I just stick to driving the car itself, and that's the only thing I'm good at, really.
I'd say you're pretty good, Lando. You're a fan favorite for sure. So Keep doing
Yeah.
what you're doing.
Thanks.
Yeah,
I try. I
think
try.
I think we've definitely heard about man crushes, so I think probably a lot of you in the audience would raise your hand. There's a lot of man crushes on you, Lando.
Thank
so.
you. Okay, thanks.
It's actually the first time he's felt uncomfortable. I feel so.
Just saying. All right, so Johnny, you brought this up before and on our prep around, with Formula One of the things that has excited you is like how all the brands really need to be successful together. Like we're on stage with ESPN and Netflix, McLaren, dentsu, Heineken, other brands that are in racing. So really, how do you feel that F1 appeals to your audiences at Heineken? And what are the growth opportunities? Like what consumer base are you thinking about as you guys are in F1?
Yeah, I mean, the first part is interesting because the sport, particularly when we're talking a lot here about the US, is at that re-inflection point where it's really got momentum. And I guess when something's much more mature and much more established, brands and broadcasters, like we're in a competitive business and we carve out our niches of soccer or American football or baseball or whatever it might be. I think at this moment in time for what's happening with the sport, we're best served working together. Of course, we want to be synonymous and associated with the brand, but we want Netflix to do a great job. We want ESPN to do a great job. We don't mind if Rolex do a great job. We don't mind everything that's contributing to the sport is actually rising all the boats in that high tide, so to speak. So I think at this moment, this sort of inflection point, it is a bit unusual that everyone's very up for working together, and you put down the traditional corporate battles that sometimes you fight in, via broadcasters and in other sports. So that's a bit unusual, and it's really quite nice because we're all in this together. It's better if Lando does well and closes the gap. That's better for the audience. It's better for us. It's better for everybody. So all the time we're seeing everybody pile in. Wendell touched on it. For us, we talk about that different audience that's coming in who are highly engaged, very multicultural, more females, younger, just generally more engaged and more switched on, and very hungry for content, which I think is one of the key, massive differentiators of this sport, which is there's an inexorable amount of data and people are up for all of it. So whatever can be shared is consumed, and therefore people feel highly, highly engaged. And then so much of that is new, but so much of it is also traditional values. Netflix has humanized everything. It was always very premium. So for example, for a brand like us, it just makes a lot of sense. Like there's just something about F1. We talk about Monte Carlo, we talk about the races around the world. It just fits. And we have all the research in the world, but sometimes with brands and partnerships and consumers, who are frequently called people, you just know if there's a fit. And we just know, and we feel it every day. We see it in the data, but we know that fit exists, and that's what excites us.
So we've been doing a lot of talking about brands, but Zach, from a McLaren standpoint, it's a reciprocal relationship. How is McLaren really benefiting from F1 and from Netflix and from ESPN and Heineken and Rolex?
Well, for all the awareness they create for the sport. At the end of the day, if people weren't watching TV or downloading Netflix, or the Heinekens of the world aren't talking to their hundreds of millions of consumers promoting this great sport that we have, we'd be running around the streets of Monte Carlo by ourselves. So they spread the word and create the excitement around our sport, amplify the excitement that we bring to the table. Those are the kind of consumer elements, and then a lot of our partners on the technology side help us go faster. We've got the Ciscos and the Dells and the Googles, and they're integrated within the racing team. So our new wind tunnel and our CFD has all been provided by Dell, our communications with Cisco, and so I think the days of logo slapping are long gone, and there's a lot of different ways our partners integrate within our racing team. We focus on the fan first. If we have lots of fans, then everything else will kind of take care of itself. So that's our number one target audience, is making sure we've got great fans, avid fans, new fans, young fans, women, etc., diversity. And that's the growth of the sport. I think we've always had a huge avid fan following. It's the new fans, and I can't tell you how many people come up to me now and say, I never paid attention to Formula One, and now I won't miss a race. So I think we've gone from awareness to avid fan almost overnight, and people won't miss it. And 9 out of 10 times I'm being told that by females, young kids, moms. I think we've always had kind of the typical sports fan, if you'd like. It's the new audience that I think has been what's been so impressive with the growth. And I think the sport it's because there's so much that goes on, not just on the playing field, if you'd like, but it's big business off the playing field. And I think that's what's now getting captured in all this unique content, and people are fascinated. They either follow the drivers or the teams, or they like the globality, or they like the technology, or they like the politics. So there's a lot our sport has to offer that maybe other sports are, maybe more focused on the field of play, and you don't get into kind of some of the politics that goes on, because all the team bosses are a bunch of pricks, and you can't trust any of us, and Netflix in particular has done a great job of capturing that.
So I'll go to Magno next. What's next for Formula One and Netflix? Is there any other franchises you guys are thinking about?
Hopefully many, many, many more years of Drive to Survive. I mean, it's something that we love to do. And the flip side of that is I'm also excited about a specific show out of Brazil called Senna, right? That's going to pay tribute to the man, the myth, the legend, Ayrton Senna, and show his life from a really kind of unique angle. And there's meticulous replicas of the cars themselves. So it's going to be a beautiful show. It's shaping up. It's blessed by the Senna family themselves. It's shaping up to be quite a powerful and beautiful show. So it's another way to extend the love of the sport. There's no question that the success of Drive to Survive has taken us to also other sports and other leagues, and try to replicate the model of that Netflix effect to try and lift all tides. So we've done things in golf. We've done things in tennis. We just released Tour de France, which is doing well as well. And so there's more to come in this space, because we think we found a unique angle that's complementary to what's already existing. And happy to say that we have a new season of Full Swing coming. We have a new season of Breakpoint that's been announced. We have more coming in basketball. We have more coming in soccer. So a lot of different things that we're trying to pipeline, following a similar model to what we've done with you guys.
I'm excited about basketball. All right, one last question before we, I think, turn it over to the audience for questions. Wendell, this one's for you. So ESPN, the home of live sports.
Yes.
Live sports, Sports Center, everything in and around the game. What in F1 are you guys thinking about as terms of touch points for other brands, like what Heineken is doing and what other brands can do?
Thank you, Kara. Absolutely. So 2023 marks the first year of our new 3-year term with Formula One. And what's really interesting about it is Formula One is such a race is such an elegant telecast, right? But it has a lack of commercial interruption, right? Which makes it great as well. So when we think about like our broadest and our deepest rights agreement that we had with F1, we wanted to make sure that we can attach it to, outside of the race, other important brands within ESPN where sports fans go for news, analysis, and highlights, because we know everyone doesn't watch the game, but everyone watches the game around the game, if you will, right? So when you think about Sports Center, and you think about how we tell the stories and get all of the understanding about the news, the analysis, who won, why, how are the points done, how was Lando done in his particular races as well, we're trying to provide the broadest platform of our portfolio to give as much wide reach for Johnny and his brand. So ESPN Plus, right, our streaming platform, you can find F1 there. ESPN Deportes, our Hispanic in-language platform, you can find F1 there as well, right? Every place that Johnny wants to have his brand, and Dentsu did a fantastic job, shout out to you and your team, Kara, when the opportunity first came to us, you wanted us to sort of break the mold, think about it a little differently. And the way that we're leaning into Sports Center, the way that we're leaning into the game around the game and leaning into streaming, I think is going to continue to deliver the results for all brands, but particularly Heineken Silver.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to turn it over to the audience. Does anybody have any questions?
Orlando?
Do you want to? Sure, it's still there.
Lando, do you still talk to Denny Rick?
Oh, wow.
I do.
Sorry, I went for the jugular
I was
there.
having dinner with him last night, actually.
That's awesome. Now, a real question. Zach, as a brand operating in Formula One, obviously you've expanded, across different racing categories and everything else. How do you think Formula One and the structure that, that FIA have put together for what Formula One looks like in the future fits into the sort of wider brand strategy for a sustainable business model for a racing team?
Yeah, Formula One's the center of our universe, so it's more about the other racing series we're in fitting into what we're trying to do to complement Formula One. We bought an IndyCar team. We almost won the Indy 500 this year. We're winning a bunch of races, and that was about trying to be the most competitive in the North American marketplace. So no matter how much growth Formula One has in North America, we want to kind of have another layer on top because it's that important of a market for our fans, our automotive business, the majority of our partners. Then we acquired a Formula E team, and that's all around sustainability, which is very important. Formula One's making great strides in that area, but we again wanted to kind of be one step ahead of our Formula One competitors. And then our Extreme E team is about DE&I and gender equality, because you've got a male driver, a female driver. So the first time in the history of McLaren, we have Elma Gilmore from New Zealand, a McLaren driver. And so all those initiatives are very important, and we want to be the most exciting racing team in the world. So we felt if we kind of had a portfolio of complementary activity, it allows our partners to come in and dial up in those various areas. So I would like to get us to Le Mans, and then I've promised my board that we would be done with adding racing teams. And that, too, is to be very complementary to our automotive business. And at the end of the day, we're in the racing business. That helps us grow our fan base and allows our partners to have more opportunities on how they want to embrace the McLaren brand.
We have time for one more.
Thanks very much for spending your time with us today. I guess that was my question to you, Lando. How do you balance commitments like this versus being a high-performing Formula One athlete?
Yeah, I mean, it's not too bad. It's obviously it's part of the job. It's something you sign up to. As hard as it is to call Formula One a job in the first place, because it's just it's my hobby that I've loved to do since I was a kid. That's why I started it. And it's still the reason I do it. It's just because I love to do it. So
He drives for free.
I don't.
We know that.
Yeah, I guess but it's also cool for me. I guess like when I started, the last thing I wanted to come and do was some things like this, because your mind is just thinking all of racing. But now I'm happy to. I got a few days off before. I got this weekend off before Austria next weekend, and then we go straight into Silverstone. But I mean, I live just here, like 45 minutes away, so I could wake up in my own bed this morning and happily come down. If I had to fly in, I'd probably say no. So it depends. Some things are really, like this is nice, you know. Things behind like other events are maybe not quite as enjoyable to do, but things like this I honestly don't mind to do. And at the same time, it's relaxing. It's not like I'm just constantly thinking of racing still. It's still away from a racetrack, away from cars. So getting your mind off racing is just as important as thinking of it. Yeah, I mean, we fly to the UK tomorrow. Then we've got 2 days on the simulator preparing for the next few weekends. So it's not the easiest, and it takes a bit of time to kind of understand how much you want to do, how much you got to do from a training side of things, the marketing side of things, and so on. But you find a balance eventually through the years of how much you're willing to accept without having any consequences on your actual performance and mental side and things like that. So yeah, just learn all the way.
So I just want to thank everybody for coming today, and thank you to all of you for joining. I was just noting as you were answering that question, I have a bracelet on that says good vibes, so I hopefully brought good vibes today, and yours says last lap, so I hope that last lap is the win. So good luck to you on the next race, and thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you,
Cheers,
guys.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.